Who is Carrie? Chapter 11, Part 2 of Chapter 11. My heart was racing. Them sneezes was as loud as explosions to me. It seemed like they must have blown the sailors right out of their beds. I heard a footstep going slowly overhead, and I thought surely the watch had heard them sneezes and was coming after me, but the footsteps went away down the deck. I wished Dan would come with the light so's I could find something to get warm in and not sneeze no more. But he didn't come, and I figured he was stuck and couldn't get away. Or maybe he couldn't think of no excuse for coming down into the hold. I didn't know what. I just wished he would come. So I sat there shivering and shaking and rattling my teeth, and then here come the sneeze again. I wriggled my nose to make it go away, but it wouldn't. It kept coming, and just in time I grabbed my nose and my mouth and covered them up. There was 3 of them, just like the last time, and they seemed like explosions again. Still, nobody come. I was about wore out with everything, and I lay down there on the cask, shivering and rattling, and by I fell asleep. I didn't sleep good. I dozed and come half awake and dozed again, and between times dreamed the most awful dreams that the devil was after me, all red with scaly skin and spouting fire out of his mouth, and his eyes red too, like burning coals. Then I woke up. There was a bumping and a creaking and slamming of things above, and the hatch cover was off and light streaming down. I felt just terrible, all hot and soaked in sweat and shaky, and I knew I was mighty sick. Up on deck they was banging things around. I figured they was getting ready to sail. It wasn't snowing no more, at least there wasn't no snow coming down through the hatchway. The sun seemed pretty bright, and I figured it must be just after sunrise. I dropped down behind the casks where nobody could see me if they looked down the hatchway. I was too sick to worry much about anything. I wasn't thinking about who I was or anything. I just wanted to lie there and not move and not have nothing trouble me. Then I felt a sneeze come over me, and there wasn't nothing I could do about it, and I didn't care no more neither. So I sneezed and went on sneezing a few more times, and then I heard a voice say, "Somebody's down there. Who's down there?" I looked up at the hatchway. Somebody was crouched over it, looking down. It was one of the sailors, I reckoned. After a minute he stood up and said to somebody I couldn't see, "I swear somebody's down there." Then I heard Dan say, "I'll go look." He come in sight over the hatchway and climbed down the ladder. He wound his way through the casks and boxes toward me, and when he got to where I was lying there, sweating and shaking, he looked back at the hatch. I don't see nobody, sir." "Well, have a good look. I swear I heard somebody." So Dan gave me a wink and wound around through the boxes and such, and then wound his way back to me. "You don't look good, Carrie," he whispered. I couldn't hardly talk. I just shook my head. He took a quick look back at the hatch to see if anyone was coming. Nobody was. He knelt down beside me and felt my forehead. "You're hot as fire, Carrie. I reckon you're pretty sick." "I reckon I am," I said. "I don't think you ought to go with us," he said. He looked worried as could be. "It's too late, Dan," I whispered. "I can't go back. I got to risk it." Then a big voice come from above. "Who are you talking to down there?" Dan stood up. "I ain't," he started to say, but here comes some man down the ladder. He wound his way over to us. If Dan hadn't been there, he might not have seen me lying behind the cask, but he headed straight for Dan, and in a minute he was standing over me. I closed mine eyes. "Who's this nigger?" "She's mighty sick, mate," Dan said. "I can see that," the mate said. "How'd she come here?" "I know her," Dan said. "She must have followed me along and crept on board last night when nobody was looking." The mate looked down at me. "Come on now," he said. "On your feet." I sat up slowly. "I ain't got no strength, sir," I kind of whispered. "I don't want you sick on this ship," the mate said. "You'll spread it to everybody." Dan grabbed my arm and helped me up. I made it over to the ladder and started up, feeling just terrible. I climbed up the ladder with Dan boosting me along from behind and climbed over the top. Like I figured, the sun was just coming up over Brooklyn and shining bright as fire off the snow. There was so much light I could see ships miles down the harbor, just as sharp as could be. Some sailors was standing around watching. Two of them was black, and I wondered if they was slaves like Dan, or free sailors who was earning their own money. I stood there shaking and shivering, and here come Captain Ivers. Captain Ivers stared at me, his face so cold and still. I could see he didn't recognize me. White folks was like that. Finally he said, "Where did you come from? Speak up." I wasn't about to say nothing about Francis Tavern. "I work at the President's mansion." He stared at me some more. "I've seen you before." "Where have I seen you before?" "I don't know, sir. I don't think so, sir." He reached and grabbed a chunk of my hair and gave it a tug. "Don't contradict me," he said. "If I say I've seen you before, I've seen you before. Where was it?" He went on holding on to my hair. "I don't know, sir," I said. He gave my hair a tug. "Answer," he said. "Tell the truth or I'll beat it out of you." "Please, sir, I work at the President's mansion." "The President's—" "Sam Francis, that's it." "That's it," he said. "You're the nigger girl from Francis Tavern," and the corners of his mouth raised up into a tiny smile. "My nigger girl now." He turned to the mate. "Have somebody take her below and tie her to something, and wrap her up in something so she don't die on us. I don't want any dead niggers on my ship." He started to turn away, but Dan touched his arm and said, "Sir, it's true. She's one of President Washington's house niggers." Captain Ivers stopped dead in his tracks and swiveled around. He stared at me with that cold face, and then at Dan, and then back to me. "Is that the truth?" "Yes, sir," I whispered. "I've been working for him since he come to New York." He turned his head and stared out into the harbor, his face still as ice. He knew he dasn't steal a slave from the President of the United States. He wouldn't dare do that no matter how much money I was worth. He swung back, grabbed the front of my dress, and shook me. "You sure you're not lying?" "No, sir, I ain't lying," I said. "It's the truth," Dan said. "You can carry her back over there and find out, sir. I reckon the President would be powerful glad if somebody brought back a runaway slave to him." Sick as I was, I seen how smart that was. Captain Ivers turned to stare out in the harbor again. Then he looked at Dan and looked at me and said, "I'm going to see for myself, mate," he said. "Make the ship ready. We'll sail the minute I get back." Well, I was in for trouble. I'd done too many things wrong, and now with running away, they was likely to do something serious. But I was too sick to care.